is another installment of The Earth with a Thousand Faces. This is chapter 2 called The Virgin Birth. We're still in the cosmogonic cycle, and the first section of this chapter is called Mother Universe. The world-generating spirit of the Father passes into the manifold of earthly experience through a transforming medium, the Mother of the world. She is a personification of the primal element named in the second verse of Genesis, where we read that the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. In the Hindu myth, she is the female figure through whom the self begot all creatures. More abstractly understood, she is the world-bounding frame, space, time, and causality, the shell of the cosmic egg. More abstractly still, she is the lure that moved the self-brooding absolute to the act of creation. In mythologies emphasizing the material rather than the paternal aspect of the creator, this original female fills the world stage in the beginning, playing the roles that are elsewhere assigned to males, and she is virgin because of her spouse is the invisible unknown. A strange representation of this figure is to be found in the mythology of the Finns. In Runa 1 of the Kalevala, it is told how the virgin daughter of the air descended from the sky mansions into the primeval sea, and there for centuries floated on the everlasting waters. Then a storm arose in fury from the east, a mighty tempest, and the sea was wildly foaming, and the waves dashed ever higher. Thus the tempest rocked the virgin, and the billows drove the maiden over the ocean's azure surface on the crest of foaming billows, till the wind that blew around her and the sea woke life within her. For 7 centuries the water mother floated with the child in her womb. Unable to give it birth, she prayed to Ukko, the highest god, and he sent a teal to build its nest on her knee. The teal's eggs fell from the knee and broke, and the fragments formed the sky, earth, sun, moon, and clouds. Then the water mother, floating still herself, began the work of the world shaper. When the 9th year had passed over and the summer 10th was passing, from the sea her head she lifted and her forehead she uplifted, and she then began creation, and she brought the world to order on the open ocean's surface, on the far extending waters. Whosoever her hand she pointed, there she formed the jutting headlands. Wheresoever her feet she rested, there she formed the caves for fishes. When she dived beneath the water, there she formed the depths of ocean. When towards the land she turned her, there the level shores extended. Where her feet to land extended, spots were formed for salmon netting. Where her head the land touched lightly, there the carving bays extended. Further from the land she floated and abode in open water, and created rocks and ocean, and the reefs that eyes behold not, where the ships are often shattered and the sailors' lives are ended. But the babe remained in her body, growing towards a sentimental middle age. Still unborn was Vanamoen, still unborn the bard immortal. Vanamoen, old and steadfast, rested in his mother's body for the space of 30 summers, and the sum of 30 winters, ever on the placid waters upon the foaming billows. So he pondered and reflected how he could continue living in a place of so gloomy, and a dwelling far too narrow. When he could not see the moonlight, neither could behold the sunlight, then he spake the words which follow, and expressed his thoughts in the wise: Aid me, moon, and sun, release me, and the great bear lend his counsel through the portrait that I know not, through the unaccustomed passage, from the little nest that holds me from a dwelling place so narrow, to the land conduct he planted, and upon his arms he rested, rose that he might view the moonbeams and enjoy the pleasant sunlight, see the great bare stars above him and the shining stars in heaven. Thus was ancient Vandermoen, he the ever-famous minstrel, born of the divine creatrix, born of Ilmatar, his mother. In the second section is called Matrix of Destiny. The universal goddess makes her appearance to men under a multitude of guises, for the effects of creation are multitudinous, complex, and of mutually contradictory kind. When the experience from the viewpoint of the created world, the mother of life is at the same time the mother of death. She is masked in the ugly demonesses of famine and disease. The Sumero-Babylonian astral mythology identified the aspects of the cosmic female with the phases of the planet Venus. As morning star she was the virgin, as evening star the harlot, as lady of the night sky the consort of the moon, and when extinguished under the blaze of the sun she was the hag of hell. Wherever the Mesopotamian influence extended, the traits of the goddess were touched by the light of this fluctuating star. A myth from southeast Africa, collected from the Wahangwe Makoni tribe of South Rhodesia, displays the aspects of the Venus Mother in coordination with the first stages of the cosmogonic cycle. Here the original man is the moon, the morning star his first wife, the evening star his second. Just as Vandermoen emerged from the womb by his own act, so this moon man emerges from the abyssal waters. He and his wives are to be the parents of the creatures of the earth. The story comes to us as follows. Maori made the first man and called him Muutsi. He put him on the bottom of Dizovoa and gave him a Nagona filled with Nagona oil. Muutsi lived in Devoza. Muutsi said to Maori, I want to go on the earth. Maori said, you will rue it. Muutsi said, nonetheless, I want to go on the earth. Maori said, then go on the earth. Muutsi went out of Devoa and onto the earth. The earth was cold and empty. There were no grasses, no bushes, no trees. There were no animals. Muutsi wept and said to Maori, how shall I live here? Maori said, I warned you. You have started on the path at the end of which you shall die. I will, however, give you one of your own kind. Maori gave Muutsi a maiden who was called Masasi, the morning star. Maori said, Masasi shall be your wife for 2 years. Maori gave Masasi a fire maker. In the evening, Muutsi went into a cave with Masasi. Masasi said, help me. We will make a fire. I will gather Chimandra, and you can twill the Rusika. Masasi gathered kindling. Muutsi twirled the Rusika. When the fire was lighted, Muutsi lay down on one side of it, Masasi on the other. The fire burned between them. Muutsi thought to himself, why has Maori given me this maiden? What shall I do with this maiden, Masasi? When it was night, Muutsi took his Nagona horn. He moistened his index finger with a drop of Nagona oil. Muutsi said, Nadini Jambuka, Mira Nimira here. I am going to jump over the fire. Muutsi jumped over the fire. Muutsi approached the maiden, Masasi. Muutsi touched Masasi's body with the ointment on his finger. Then Muutsi went back to his bed and slept. When Muutsi wakened in the morning, he looked over to Masasi. Muutsi saw that Masasi's body was swollen. When day broke, Masasi began to bear. Masasi bore grasses, Masasi bore bushes, Masasi bore trees. Masasi did not stop bearing till the earth was covered with grasses, bushes, and trees. The trees grew, they grew till their tops reached the sky. When the tops of the trees reached the sky, it began to rain. Muutsi and Masasi lived in plenty. They had fruits and grain. Mawuzi built a house. Mawuzi made an iron shovel. Mawuzi made a hoe and planted crops. Masasi plaited fish traps and caught fish. Masasi fetched wood and water. Masasi cooked. Thus Mawuzi and Masasi lived for 2 years. After 2 years, Maori said to Masasi, "The time is up." Maori took Masasi from the earth and put her back in Devoa. Mawuzi wailed, he wailed and wept and said to Maori, "What shall I do without Masasi? Who will fetch wood and water for me, and who will cook for me?" 8 days long Mawuzi wept. 8 days long Mawuzi continued to weep, and then Maori said, "I have warned you that you are going to your death, but I will give you another woman. I will give you Morongo, the evening star. Morongo will stay with you for 2 years. Then I shall take her back again." Maori gave Mawuzi Morongo. Morongo came to Mawuzi in the hut. In the evening, Mawuzi wanted to lie down on his side of the fire. Morongo said, "Do not lie down over there. Lie down with me." Mawuzi lay down beside Morongo. Mawuzi took the Ngona horn, put some ointment on his index finger, but Morongo said, "Don't be like that. I am not like Masasi. Now smear your loins with Ngona oil, and smear my loins with Ngona oil." Mawuzi did as he was told. Morongo said, "Now couple with me." Mawuzi coupled with Morongo. Mawuzi went to sleep. Towards morning, Mawuzi woke, and as he looked over to Morongo, he saw that her body was swollen. As day broke, Morongo began to give birth. The first day, Morongo gave birth to chickens, sheep, and goats. The second night, Mawuzi slept with Morongo again, and the next morning she bore eland and cattle. The third night, Mawuzi slept with Morongo again, and the next morning Morongo bore first boys and then girls. The boys were born in the morning and were grown up by nightfall. On the fourth night, Mawuzi wanted to sleep with Morongo again, but there came a thunderstorm, and Maori spoke, "Let be. You are going quickly to your death." Mawuzi was afraid. The thunderstorm passed over. Then it had gone. Morongo said to Mawuzi, "Make a door, and then use it to close the entrance to the hut. Then Maori will not be able to see what we are doing. Then you can sleep with me." Mawuzi made a door. With it he closed the entrance to the hut. Then he slept with Morongo. Mawuzi slept. Towards morning, Mawuzi woke. Mawuzi saw that Morongo's body was swollen. As day broke, Morongo began to give birth. Morongo bore lions, leopards, snakes, and scorpions. Maori saw it. Maori said to Mawuzi, "I warned you." On the fifth night, Mawuzi wanted to sleep with Morongo again, but Morongo said, "Look, your daughters are grown. Couple with your daughters." Mawuzi looked at his daughters. He saw that they were beautiful and that they were grown up. So he slept with them. They bore children. The children which were born in the morning were full grown by night, and so Mawuzi became the Mambo king of a great people. But Morongo slept with the snake. Morongo no longer gave birth. She lived with the snake. One day Mawuzi returned to Morongo and wanted to sleep with her. Morongo said, "Let be." Mawuzi said, "But I want to." He lay with Morongo. Under Morongo's bed lay the snake. The snake bit Mawuzi. Mawuzi sickened. After the snake had bitten Mawuzi, Mawuzi sickened, and the next day it did not rain. The plants withered, and the rivers and lakes dried. The animals died, and the people began to die. Many people died. Mawuzi's children asked, "What can we do?" Mawuzi's children said, "We will consult the Hakata." The children consulted the Hakata, and the Hakata said, "Mawuzi the Mambo is sick and pining. Send Mawuzi back to the Devoa." Therefore Mawuzi's children strangled Mawuzi and buried him. They buried Morongo with Mawuzi, and then they chose another man to be Mambo. process of procreation represents an epoch in the development of the world. The pattern for the procession was foreknown, almost as something already observed. This is indicated by the warning of the All-Highest. But the Moon Man, the mighty living one, would not be denied the realization of his destiny. The conversation at the bottom of the lake is the dialogue of eternity and time. The to be or not to be, unquenchable desire is finally given. Its rope movement begins. The wives and the daughters of the Moon Man are the personifications and precipitators of his destiny. With the evolution of his world creative will, the virtues and features of the goddess mother were metaphorosed after the birth from the elemental womb. The first two wives were prehuman, superhuman, but as the cosmogonic round proceeded and the growing moment passed from its primordial to its human historical forms, the mistresses of the cosmic births withdrew, and the field remained to the women of men. Thereupon the old demiurgic sire, in the midst of his community, became metaphysical and anachronism. When at last he grew tired of the merely human and yearned back again to the wife of his abundance, the world sickened a moment under the pull of his reaction, but then released itself and ran free. The initiative passed to the community of the children, and the symbolic dream-heavy parental figure subsided into the original abyss. Only man remained on the furnished earth, and the cycle had moved on. The third section is called Womb of Redemption. The world of human life is now the problem. Guided by the practical judgment of the kings and the instruction of the priests of the dice of divine revelation, the field of consciousness so contracts that the grand lines of the human comedy are lost in a welter of cross purposes. Men's perspective become flat, comprehending only the light reflecting tangible surfaces of existence. The vista into depth closes over. The significant form of the human agony is lost to view. Society lapses into mistake and disaster, and the little ego has usurped the judgment seat of the self. This is in myth a perpetual theme. In the voices of the prophets, a familiar cry. The people yearn for some personality who, in a world of twisted bodies and souls, will represent again the lines of the incarnate image. We are familiar with the myth from our own tradition. It occurs everywhere under the variety of guises. When the Herod figure was brought mankind to the nadir of spiritual abasement, the occult forces of the cycle begin of themselves to move. In an inconspicuous village the maid is born who will maintain herself undefiled of the fashionable errors of her generation. A miniature in the midst of men of the cosmic woman, who was the bride of the wind, her womb remaining fallow, as the primordial abyss summons to itself by its very readiness the original power that fertilized the void. Now on a certain day, while Mary stood near the fountain to fill her pitcher, the angel of the Lord appeared unto her, saying, Blessed art thou, Mary, for in thy womb thou hast prepared a habitation for the Lord. Behold, light from the heaven shall come and dwell in thee, and through thee shall shine in all the world. The story is recounted everywhere, and with such striking uniformity of the main contours that the early Christian missionaries were forced to think that the devil himself must be throwing up mockeries of their teaching wherever they set their hand. Fray Pedro Simon reports in his notices that after work had been begun amongst the people of Tunja and Sogamoza in Colombia, the demon of that place began giving contrary doctrines, and among other things he sought to discredit what the priest had been teaching concerning the incarnation, declaring the sun would bring it to pass by taking flesh in the womb of a virgin of the village of Gojeta, causing her to conceive by the rays of the sun while she yet remained a virgin. These tidings were proclaimed through the region, and it so happened that the head man of the village had two virgin daughters, each desirous that the miracle should become accomplished in her. These two began going out from their father's dwelling and garden enclosure every morning at the first peep of dawn, and mounting one of the numerous hills about the village, in the direction of the sunrise, they disposed themselves in such a way that the first rays of the sun would be free to shine upon them. This going on for a number of days, it was granted the demon by divine permission, whose judgments are incomprehensible, that things should come to pass as he had planned, and in such a fashion that one of the daughters became pregnant, as she declared by the sun, 9 months, and she brought into the world a large and valuable Hakuata, who in their language is an emerald. The woman took this, and wrapping it in cotton, placed it between her breasts, where she kept it a number of days, and at the end of which time it was transformed into a living creature, all by order of the demon. The child was named Goran Chacho, and he was reared in the household of the head man, his grandfather, until he was some 24 years of age. Then he proceeded in triumphant procession to the capital of the nation, and was celebrated throughout the provinces as the child of the sun. In the mythology tells of the maiden Pavarti, daughter of the mountain king Himalaya, who retreated into the high hills to practice very severe austerities. A tyrant named Taraka had usurped the mastery of the world, and according to the prophecy, only a son of the high god Shiva could overthrow him. Shiva, however, was the pattern god of yoga, all aloof, alone, indrawn in meditation. It was impossible that Shiva should ever be moved to beget a son. Pavarti determined to change the world's situation by matching Shiva in meditation. Aloof, alone, indrawn into her soul, she too fasted naked behind the blazing sun, even adding to the heat by building 4 additional great fires to each of the 4 quarters. The handsome body shriveled into a brittle construction of bones. The skin became leathery and hard. Her hair stood matted and wild. The soft liquid eyes burned. One day a Brahmin youth appeared and asked why anyone so beautiful should be destroying herself with such torture. My desire, she replied, is Shiva, the highest object. Shiva is a god of solitude and unshakable concentration. I therefore am practicing these austerities to move him from his state of balance and bring him to me in love. Shiva, the youth said, is a god of destruction. Shiva is the world annihilator. Shiva's delight is to meditate in burial grounds amidst the reek of corpses. There he beholds the rod of death, and that is congenial to his devastating heart. Shiva's garlands are of living serpents. Shiva is a pauper furthermore, sundry masquerades. Jove as a bull, a swan, a shower of gold. Any leaf accidentally swallowed, any nut, or even the breath of a breeze may be enough to fertilize the ready womb. The procreating power is everywhere, and according to the whim or destiny of the hour, either a hero savior or a world annihilating demon may be conceived. One can never know. Images of virgin birth abound in the popular tales as well as in myth. One example will suffice: a queer folk tale from Tonga, belonging to a little cycle of stories told of the handsome man Sinalao. This tale is of particular interest not because of its extreme absurdity, but because it clearly announces in unconscious burlesque every one of the major motives of the typical life of the hero: a virgin birth, quest for the Father, an ordeal, an atonement with the Father, and the assumption and coronation of the Virgin Mother, and finally the heavenly triumph of the true sons, while the pretenders are heated hot. There was once a certain man and his wife, and the woman was pregnant. When her time came to be delivered of her child, she called her husband to come and lift her, that she might give birth. But that she bore a clam, her husband threw her down in anger. She, however, bade him take the clam and leave it in Sinalao's bathing pool. Now Sinalao came to bathe and flung the coconut husk that had used to wash himself on the water. The clam slid along and sucked the coconut husk and became pregnant. One day the woman, the mother of the clam, saw the clam rolling along towards her. She angrily asked the clam why she had come, but the shellfish replied that it was no time for anger, and asked her to curtain off a place in which she could give birth. So a screen was placed, and the clam gave birth to a fine big baby boy. Then she rolled off back to her pool, and the woman cared for the child, who was named Fateh, going on underneath sandalwood. Time went on, and lo, the clam was again with child, and once more came rolling along to the house that she might give birth there to her child. The performance was repeated, and again the clam bore a fine boy, who was named Myrtle. He too was left with the woman and her husband to be cared for. When the two children had grown up to manhood, the woman heard that Sinalao was going to hold a festival, and she determined that her two grandsons should be present. So she called the youths and bade them prepare, adding that the man to whose festival they were going was their father. When they came to where the festival was being held, they gazed at it by all the people. There was not a woman but had her eyes fixed upon them. As they went along, a group of women called to them to turn aside to them, but the two youths refused and went on, until they came to where the kava was being drunk. There they served the kava, but Sinalao, angry at their disturbing his festival, ordered 2 bulls to be brought. Then he bade his men seize one of the youths and cut him up. So the bamboo knife was sharpened to cut him, but when its point was placed on his body, it just slipped over the skin, and he cried out, "The knife is placed and slips. Do thou but sit and gaze at us, whether we are like thee or not." Then Sinalao asked what the youth had said, and they repeated the lines to him. So he ordered the 2 young men to be brought, and asked him who their father was. They replied that he himself was their father. After Sinalao had kissed his nephew's sons, he told them to go and bring their mother.